Hi, everyone. I am so sorry for that rocky start. We always try to start on time, and my computer was just freaking out. Maybe it was the storm. I don't know. But my name is Stacy, and I'm a bookseller and the events coordinator at Belmont Books. Belmont Books, for those of you who are not familiar with us, is an independent and locally owned bookstore in Belmont, Massachusetts. Our bookstore and cafe are currently open for curbside pickup. Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that we have a number of virtual events coming up, including Congressman Eric Swalwell in conversation with Congresswoman Catherine Clark for his book Endgame: Inside the Impeachment of Donald J. Trump, and that's on August 11th. And we have Meg Medina in conversation with Sarah Marie Jetty for Meg's latest Mercy Suarez book. And you can register for these and our other events on our website, belmontbooks.com, which is also where you can purchase Caroline and Barbara's books. If you have any concerns during the presentation, you can send a message in the chat section. If you have any questions for the authors, please type them into the Ask a Question section, and we will get to as many questions as we can. We're very excited to welcome Caroline and Barbara. I'm conflicted about whether I should do their full intro or just let them get to it, given how late this is. I will tell you that With or Without You is a page-turning story of love, loyalty, loss, and resilience. And Caroline has extremely kindly offered for the first 25 people who buy the book to look at 2 pages of their manuscript if they are a writer, and she will mark them up. And there are also book plates available for the book, so that's very exciting. And maybe I will do an introduction because I think we just lost Caroline. All right, Caroline Leavitt is the award-winning author of 12 novels, including the New York Times bestsellers Pictures of You and Is This Tomorrow? Her essays and stories have been included in many magazines and journals. She's a book critic for People, AAPR, and the San Francisco Chronicle, and she teaches writing online at Stanford and UCLA. Barbara Shapiro is the best-selling author of 8 novels, 4 screenplays, and a nonfiction book. Her novels, The Muralist and the Art Forger, won the New England Book Award for Fiction and the Boston Authors Society Award for Fiction, among other honors. Her books have been selected as community reads in numerous cities and translated throughout the world. Before becoming a novelist, she taught sociology at Tufts University and creative writing at Northeastern University, among several other careers. She and her husband, Dan, divide their time between Boston and Florida. And now we are all here. And without further ado, I'm going to turn the event over to the authors and thank everyone for their patience.
Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Barbara. I want to tell everybody that Barbara and I have been friends for a really long time because we share a publisher, Algonquin Books, and a lot of other stuff that we share. And I'm just so happy that you were able to do this with me, Barbara. It means a lot.
Yeah, well, it's wonderful. The last time we did this, Caroline was interviewing me and we were actually sitting next to each other.
I know.
Well, anyway, this is better than nothing. So
yes, this is better than nothing.
That's what we just got. So before I even start, I have to tell you, I love this book.
Thank you.
It was, I was supposed to be working on my own book, but no, I was reading yours all the time. I'll just check a little bit. But I loved it, and I am far from alone. So I just want to read you a few of the things that people have said about this fabulous book. So when I started reading Caroline Leavitt's gorgeously written page turner, I felt like I was falling in love, flushed, fascinated, filled with hope, fear, and joy. Beyond being utterly captivated, I felt like I had grown wiser and more humane after reading this beautiful novel. And this is Jean Kwok, she knows of what she speaks. Another one, Caroline Leavitt has accomplished With or Without You, the hardest but most profound task of a novelist. She makes us not only understand, but care about characters as flawed as ourselves, which I totally agree with. And one more from my buddy Chris Castellani, a compulsively readable novel of artistic ambition and the various betrayals lovers and friends must endure and inflict on each other. Caroline Leavitt is a born storyteller, and this is one knockout of it. I gotta agree with all of them.
Thank you.
And then, so the book isn't even out, and she's already gotten all of these accolades, and the Bustle said best new books out this week. It was an AARP pick. Pop Sugar, 26 incredible new books coming your way this August. New must-read books for the ultimate escape, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So how are you feeling on lunch day with all your fun?
It's very, very funny, because while I was writing this book, there came a point where I had to turn the book in to my editor in like 3 months. And I sat there and I looked at the book and I thought, this is really terrible. This is just it's not holding together. The characters are boring. I started to have a little mini hysteria. And my husband came in and said, you do this every book. You can't know what a book is going to be like until you send it out. So just send it out. So I sent it out, and I was deeply surprised that the editor liked it, because I was really intending to ask for the advance back. And then, as the day draws closer, when it's in a pandemic, you get very, very frightened, because so much publishing is luck and timing, and you never know if people are going to like what you do, and sometimes they don't, and there's nothing you can do about it. But this time has been amazing, and things have been coming very fast, and I'm still in that point. I haven't caught up to it yet, because I'm still in that point where I'm sitting in the middle of my office, which is this room, thinking I should give them back the advance.
We have a saying in my writers group: it's never as good or as bad as you think it is. And I think that's really the truth.
That's good advice. That's really good advice.
So Stacy mentioned a couple of things that you also do besides having written 12 novels. And I'm just amazed and in awe of how you do all of these things, especially all the things you do for other writers. The writing community loves Caroline. She is like our favorite person, because she goes out of her way to help other writers. But she's an essayist, she's a short story writer, she's a reviewer, she's an editor, she's a teacher, she is a Twitter master. She's been published in Poets and Writers and Psychology Today, the New York Times, and the Boston Globe, and blah, blah, blah. And if I remember correctly, do you also name colors?
Yes, I do. I'm a professional namer. And I will tell you, the naming jobs have dried up, but my last professional job in naming was to name a restaurant. It was street food. It was half Indian, but they wanted to sound very, very American. So I named it Jakarta Jones, and they all loved it. They said, great, great. And they were just about to roll out the names when they found out there really was a Jakarta Jones, a person, and he was a murderer. So
that's a great story.
That name went by the wayside. But yeah, that's one of the things that I do. But I have to tell you, all of this really comes from growing up in an extremely dysfunctional family where I was very, very shy. I'm not shy anymore, but I was very, very shy, and no matter what I did, it wasn't good. And I just got determined that I was going to change, and I was going to be the opposite of everyone in my family.
Well, I think you have succeeded in that. But I want you to just talk for a minute about the most amazing thing that you have done recently for the writers community, which is called A Mighty Blaze.
Right.
So just quick, and then we'll go back to your
A Mighty Blaze started when the pandemic started. I had my first event, which was a big library event in Houston with thousands of people and other writers. I was very excited, and of course they just canceled it. And I was so mad, and I was walking around the house saying, nothing is canceled. No, I'm not gonna accept this. So I started this little thing called the Nothing is Canceled book tour, and I put the word out to authors saying, look, make videos, send it to me. I'll post it. We'll get it around. I made a video for myself that I was going to give at the library convention. I sent it to the librarians, and all of a sudden it started growing. And I had more and more work, and I kept thinking, what is going on here? And then Ron Charles from the Washington Post called me and said, Caroline, what are you doing? I said, I have no idea. It's just sort of building. I'm doing a service. And then, thank God, my friend Jenna Blum called me and said, listen, I was sort of thinking of doing something. Do you want some help? And I said, oh God, yes, please, please. So we built ourselves as, two women in yoga pants, and we're just starting this thing called the Mighty Blaze. We're going to promote authors in indie bookstores. We're just going to post videos. It's going to be very manageable. It was like flying. It's like flying a rocket when you don't even know if it's built right. We had like 200 authors the first day asking us for help. And we thought, how are we going to do this? So we hired a staff, which is amazing to me. I've never had a staff in my life. 20 passionate volunteers. All of us were working like 13 hours a day trying to get this going. And all of a sudden, we were getting more and more people coming to us. The Washington Post came to us, the Authors Guild, the Boston Globe. So I started reaching out to writers, and they all said yes. I mean, we got John Irving to come and Gil Godwin and all these really big names, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Hey, what about me next week?
And Barbara Shapiro also. We got Barbara Shapiro, of course. And
this is just something.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's a whole. They're doing. Jenna is really more of the business end of the stuff. She's like the major producer CEO, where they say, I'm the heart. I'm the one who I call up the writers and say, hey, would you like to come? And I sweet talk them. And Jenna is the one who has these genius ideas about, we're going to do a virtual book club, and we're going to do a cocktail party, and we're going to do this, and she makes it happen. Makes it happen. And it's giving back.
Thank you. So now let's talk about With or Without You. So,
okay.
Why this story? Why now? Tell us.
It's funny. This is actually my second coma book. And my first coma book was written, I actually was in a coma many years ago. After the birth of my son, I had this mysterious blood disorder, and I was dying, and they didn't know what to do, so they put me in a medical coma for 3 weeks, and they gave me memory blockers because I think they did it because they wanted me to stay still, because if I moved, I would hemorrhage, and if I couldn't remember anything, I would be okay. And I was in the coma for a long time while they were doing all these weird things to me, and finally there was a tiny German hematologist who was about to resign, and she said, I think I know what this is, but we have to do this test to find out because the treatment's very poisonous, and NYU Hospital didn't want to do it because it was very expensive. And Jeff, my husband, said, I will pay for the goddamn test, do the test. So they did that test, and sure enough, it showed that I had this protein that my body had produced after I gave birth, which was literally stopping all my blood from clotting. So when they were doing exactly the wrong thing by opening me up to let out the blood because nothing would clot and it would get really bad, but they knew how to treat me. So I didn't die. Obviously, I survived. But what happened was my mind was blank of everything that happened except for the stuff when I started to wake up. But my body remembered. So when I was finally able to go home and I was okay, I would walk to a supermarket and I would see like a certain color and I would have a panic attack. And I would say to Jeff, what is this? And he would say, well, that was the color of the hospital curtains, or that was this, or whatever else. So I knew I had to do something. So I wrote my first coma book, which was very dark. It was called Coming Back to Me. It was not pleasant to write it. It was very much about me, and it didn't help. I mean, I still had all these post-traumatic things going on, and I was afraid to go to sleep. And I don't know when it started to dawn on me again that I wanted to write another book, but I began to feel better, much less traumatic things coming out of my body. And I thought, what if I wrote a book about a woman who was in a coma who wasn't me, who was totally different than me? And as soon as I thought that, I felt lighter. And I thought, you know what? She's going to remember everything. She's not going to have any memory blockers. She's going to remember every detail. And not only that, when she comes out of the coma, she's not going to have my experience. She's going to be actually better in a lot of ways. She's going to have a different personality, and she's also going to have a talent. And as soon as I thought that, I thought, wow, this is going to be really fun to write. And I started feeling this is like my light coma book. So I started doing this research. No, I started doing this research. I have this neurologist friend, Joseph Clark in Cincinnati, who's wonderful. And he told me that a lot of people in coma, their brain rewires and refires. People can wake up speaking fluent Mandarin when they've never spoken any language. One guy woke up and he was a virtuoso on the piano, and he's playing in concert halls, and he'd never been able to do that before. And I thought, this is great. I really want to write about this. This is amazing and full of wonder. And so that's how the story came about. I wanted to write about what happens in a long-term relationship when one person changes. I wanted to write a little bit about brain chemistry. I wanted to write about what does it mean to be famous and what does it mean to lose that. And I basically wanted to write my way into a book that for me was full of wonder. And this was it.
It is a wonderful book, so it's full of wonder. But one of the things that impressed me the most about the book were the scenes when she is in the coma. And she's aware of what's going on, but she's not really quite aware. And that felt so real to me. And I knew, because you had told me that this was true, that you had been in a coma. And I'm reading this and thinking, well, that's how come she's so good at describing this, because she was there. And then I read the piece in the Daily Beast that said it was completely different. So how did you do such a good job at something that wasn't what happened to you?
When they woke me up very slowly. And a lot of the feelings that Stella has in the coma were feelings that every once in a while I would have. I mean, I was heavily sedated with morphine and still on the memory blockers. But when I started to wake up, I had a lot of those feelings where I definitely felt that everything I thought I knew about reality was wrong. And for me, sounds did have colors. Everything was in black and white for a while. And I would have these vivid, strange feelings that I knew that I was different and things were different, but I didn't know how to get back to where I needed to get back. And it was just weird. I mean, I thought I was on a TV show because I kept hearing a laugh track, which actually were the compression stockings that they put on me. And it was like a movie, because there were always doctors and medical students around me, and they were always asking the same kind of bad medical TV questions, like, do you know what day it is? Do you know who you are? And I didn't. I knew who I was, but I didn't really know who I was. So a lot of that was from that kind of experience. It took a really long time as they lowered the dose of the morphine and the memory blockers for me to realize what was truly going on. So a lot of that stuff that I wrote about Stella was partly what I had experienced and partly what I wished I had experienced. I would have felt much better if I was in a coma if I had known, I'm here and I'm just sort of floating, instead of not feeling anything, the big blank.
Yeah. Well, you did a great job with that.
Thank you.
I thought that was wonderful. So there's so much in this book. I mean, you mentioned a few things that you did, but so I was just trying to make some kind of a list. So first of all, for people who haven't read it yet, you're in for a treat, because it really is a page turner. It's not, a thriller in that kind of sense, but
right.
Fantastic job of making it unputdownable. But so the book it's full of struggles, tragedy, strength, weakness, disappointments, regret, loss, love triangles, frustrations, friends, lovers, betrayals, misremembered childhoods, people doing the wrong thing for the right reasons, people doing the right thing for the wrong reasons, good choices and bad choices. And in some ways, it's kind of a coming of age story.
Yes.
And so how did you juggle all of these things? I mean, what came first, second, third? I mean, how did this work?
It was really hard. It was really hard. I mean, you and I have talked about structure before. We're both like heavy duty structuralists. So I would keep structuring it and then tearing it up. And the thing is that I still sort of love backstory, but I had a new editor who was Chuck Adams, and he didn't love backstory. So we were going back and forth, and we were saying, what do you mean I have to cut this? He kept saying, we're going to streamline it. We're going to streamline it. And I had to learn how to learn, okay, here's the basic narrative line that we're following. And I can have backstory as long as it's triggered by something in the present narrative. And as long as when you go back to the present narrative, the person is changed by remembering whatever's in the past. And it was something new that I learned, and I'll be forever grateful to Chuck for that, because it really helped and it really changed my writing. I have to honestly say that a lot of the time I did not know what I was doing. As you know, as a writer, I just sort of was kind of looking at the synopsis and saying, okay, today I'm going to write Libby, and I'm not going to think about anything else. And then today I'm going to write this thing. And there were a lot of calls to other writers. I'm sure I called you or emailed you. I must have, say like, I can remember talking about this story with you, saying, I don't know what to do. And you just sort of take in what people say, and then it starts to take on a life on itself. So you begin to realize. And to me, the most amazing thing is when I gave it to Chuck, where he would say things like, oh, I see what you've done here. You've done da 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 da. And I'd listen to him and say, really? Wow, I'm so happy. I mean, I had no idea.
Yeah.
But you know that happens with your work too, right?
So yeah, so you started out thinking you wanted to write your light coma book.
Yes.
And then how did the different layers get added in? What was it that?
Well, first it was the coma book, and then it was a relationship book. And as I was going through the relationship, I was really interested in writing about somebody in his 40s who had once had fame in his 20s and didn't have it anymore. And my husband knows a lot of musicians, and he knows a lot of guys in their 40s who were once really big, and now they're just sort of working along. And I kept thinking about that, thinking, what would that be like? And I talked to Al Cooper's wife, who told me that she was always like pushed aside. People always thought she was part of Al's entourage instead of a person in her own right. Yeah. And the more I started thinking about, like, well, what does it mean to be a success and what does it mean to be a failure? Then I started to think about, my own trajectory in publishing, which has been so completely weird. I mean,
But tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was like the flavor of the month when I was in my 20s. I published one novel, and it was a big success. And there I was flown everywhere, and I thought, wow, this is great. This is going to happen all the time, and it never did. The second book did not do as well. Well, it did, but not for
later. But it was
second book did not do that well. Got a 3-book deal with a big publisher. They weren't that interested in me, and the book did not do well at all. So I got another 3-book deal, same thing. So at that time I was on book 9. Most of my friends already who were writers were winning prizes. They were being known. And I was the person at the party and somebody would say, well, what do you do? And I'd say, oh, I'm a writer, with a question mark. So there I am with my 9th book. And my then editor calls me up to say, Caroline, we're not publishing it. And I said, why not? And she said, well, we think it's unspecial. So of course I started to cry, and I said, well, I can make it special. I can rewrite it. And there was this funny silence. And she said, no, We don't really think that you can. Can't believe I'm laughing at it now because it was really terrible at the time. So I said, well, what if I send you something else? And again, there was this funny silence. And she said, no, we don't think so. So I called up all my friends, crying, saying, you know what? Nobody knows who I am. I don't have sales. I'm not going to be published ever again. I don't know what to do. And one of my friends said, I have this editor at Algonquin. I want to talk to her about you. And I said, well, you can, but nothing's going to happen. So she went to talk to Andrea Miller, who was there at the time. And all of a sudden I got a call from Andrea and she's talking to me. And all of a sudden I realized she's pitching me Algonquin. Why is she pitching me? And I said to her, look, you know, I really don't sell books. I've had like 8 books published and maybe I've sold 750 copies of all the books. And she laughed and she said, oh, you will now. We don't care about that. So they took that non-special book. They got it in 6 printings before it was even out, 6 months before it was out. Became a Costco's Penny's Pick. It was on the New York Times bestseller list. Its second week out. And all of a sudden, everybody who had ignored me was suddenly calling me, including the editor who had said it was a non-special book, who was asking my agent, did I want to come back? And I said, no.
Yeah.
So in a way, it was actually a very good thing to happen for me because I have a very different feeling about success now. I sort of feel like, you know what, you pour yourself into your work, you do the best you can. Hopefully you have, we're very lucky to have such a supportive, amazing team with Algonquin. They really support their writers and they do everything they can for your books. And I just feel that, well, you know, if this book is a success, that's great. And if it's not, then I'm already thinking of the next book. And it's sort of, I wanted Simon to learn that if you put your self-worth on whether thousands of people love you, rather than one particular person loving you, then that's no kind of life. That's no kind of life. So in a way, it was a good thing. It was a good thing to happen.
It's, I mean, I had a similar experience with Algonquin.
I know you did.
5 books that nobody read, and then I wrote 4 that I couldn't get published, and then, you know, they took my book that everybody said they didn't know how to sell and turned it into the New York Times.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was when we first met.
We first met. I was going to say that I just remember you walking down the streets in Soho and you looked so glorious and so radiant and you had this scarf on and you were so happy. And I knew that happiness.
Yeah, it was all great. It was all great.
It was all great.
So you went through this complicated process. How many drafts did you write?
Of With or Without You? Oh, like 20, at least 20. That's usually in my process. It's like books they sort of hibernate inside me, and then I keep doing draft after draft after draft. And I'm sure in the book that I'm writing now, it's going to be like another 20 drafts until I figure out, you know, it's like you don't know what it's about until you're done, even if you map it up as you and I
as we do.
As we do. You don't really know the nuances until the last moment. And
so how long did it take?
I asked them to give me 3 years, and they said, no, that's too long. And I said, well, 2.5. And they said, okay. And then, because Chuck was busy cutting my backstory, all of a sudden I had this tightly written novel, and I was done in 1.5 years, which has never happened.
Wow, that's amazing.
Which was amazing. And the rewrites that he had me do were, he was having me doing rewrites the whole time that I was writing it. But the major things that I really screwed up on were the timeline. I mean, it was like, as you know,
that's like what we talked about. We talked when you were writing.
We talked about that. I had calendars. I had it mapped out, and I had Algonquin has a wonderful copy editor, and she would like be emailing me every day saying, Caroline, a pregnancy lasts 9 months, and yours in this book is 2 weeks, or you can't have it be winter and then spring, or I would have people becoming nurses after 2 weeks of college, and those kinds of things. I just don't think about. But luckily, that was what took the longest time, like trying to figure it out. Well, how is this going to work? Just to figure out what the goddamn pill was that Stella was going to take that was going to put her in a coma took me weeks of research.
Yeah, those things, sometimes they're right there, and other times it's 10 drafts in before you even know that it's there. And the multiple viewpoints, did you always know you were going to do the 3 viewpoints?
I love
because
multiple.
That's really hard. It's really hard.
I love multiple. You think so? Yeah, really? I think I'm a busybody. I love to know like what's going on inside people's heads, and I like to go deep inside them. And that's the part I love the most. And there was never any question that I was going to do it that way. My big question was whether I was going to do it in present tense or past tense.
I think we discussed that too. We discussed that.
I couldn't, I don't know what to do in my next book. Did you ever decide what's better and why?
Which is better for every book.
For every book is different.
It's just different. But what I want to know, so when I do multiple viewpoints, I actually do them linearly. I may move them around afterwards. So do you do that, or do you write one character, then another character, then another character?
Well, I have sheets of paper where I've mapped out their story arcs, and then I have to figure. So I guess I do, because then once I have it mapped out, I have to think of, well, where should I put this tragedy in somebody else's life? When are things happening at the same? And that's really hard. That drives me crazy. But so I guess I do.
The multicolored file cards. It's much easier. You give each character a different color, and you mix their stories up, and that really works. So you do it pretty much the way I do it.
Yeah. I have to tell everybody that one of the most amazing things about Barbara is that she's really able to get to the heart of structure. On this next book that I'm doing, I gave her my synopsis because I knew there was something wrong and I had no idea what it was. And Barbara said, there's no stakes. You have to go back and put in stakes. And she gave me some wonderful ideas, and I was able to fix it, and then they bought it. So
all right. So that's what writers do.
Because you can't see it in your own stuff. That's why you can't see it. You have to give it to a writer who knows structure, who can tell you, like, you should do this.
What you need. So do you want to talk a little bit about the book you're working on now, or would you rather not? You don't want to.
I'd rather not, because
you don't have to do that. Okay, so I have one more question for you. Actually, I have 2, but the last one is, so you are an editor, you're a reviewer, you work with aspiring writers. So what is the piece of advice, or 2 or 3 pieces of advice, that you would give an aspiring writer who's here tonight?
Okay, there's 2 of them. The first one is, do not write to the market. Just do not write to the market. Don't even think about the market while you're writing. While you're writing, think about, what is it that haunts you about this story? What is the question that you're trying to find out? Why are you writing this book? To figure out the answer. You have to write a book that, like John Truby says, that will change your life. So don't write to the market. Write the book that you need for yourself. The second one is, never give up. I don't care if 8 million agents tell you, you know what, you're not a writer, go do something else. There might be the 8 millionth and one that is going to tell you this is gorgeous and turn it into a bestseller that everybody's going to love. So do not give up. It can take a long time. And also always remember that anything can change any moment. You can go from failure to success and back again. And it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is keep writing. Persistence will pay off. And also be kind to other writers. The writers community is really, really important. Help other writers. Never be jealous of another writer because you don't know what else is going on in their life. It could be a horrifying story, but always help out. And I want to give you one last piece of advice that Carolyn C. gave me when I was first starting out, where she said every week, handwrite now you can email it, but she told me to handwrite a really nice letter to an author you love. Don't ask for anything. Just tell them how much their work has meant to you. That's a really nice thing to do. And sometimes they'll answer, sometimes they won't, but it makes you feel really good. And that's how you build community.
Well, that's really nice. So my last question I learned from a friend of mine who is a brilliant writer, whose name is Caroline Levitt. And she told me that at the end of every interview, you have to end with the question, what question should I be absolutely mortified that I forgot to ask you?
No, my own medicine. I guess it would be, do you have hope for the world the way it is right now? And the answer to that is, yeah. And the answer to that is, I do. I'm sort of, my family when I was growing up used to mock me and call me Pollyanna. But as horrifying as everything that is going on right now, I tend to think that as long as there are like some people who are helpers or some people who are doing something about this, maybe we can get through this. So the answer is yes. I always try to have some hope for the world.
Well, that's
it.
We will. No, we're gonna get through this. It doesn't. I mean,
I think we can get through this.
Yeah, we can get through it. And really good books help us get through all of this.
Books have empathy. Books. Also for writers, you do not have to write about COVID. You do not have to write about politics. It's too early. First of all, we don't know how we feel about it yet. But what you want to do is try to create empathy. And you can do that by writing all kinds of stories.
That's
Thank
all
you for
very
these
true.
great interview questions.
So read lots of books, Caroline's especially, and buy them at your local independent bookstore.
Like Belmont Books.
Like Belmont Books, which is one of the most beautiful bookstores, independent bookstores I've ever been in.
Thanks, Barbara.
And so now we'll take questions, or how does this part work?
Yeah, I can. We've got a bunch of questions here already. They started a few days ago, so I will start reading them. Carolyn, I've heard you speak about the catharsis that came with this novel. A, how long did it take you to write it once you sat down at your computer, not how long from the event of your own coma? And B, was anything particularly difficult to write about? And that's from Annie P.
Annie, it took me, well, I had been thinking about it for about 5 years before I had the idea and start putting it together again. So once I started writing, it took me, I had it done really quickly in like 2.5 years, which is very quick for me. Parts of it were really, really hard for me to write. Oddly enough, the parts that I didn't experience myself, like Stella in the coma, knowing everything, were wonderful for me to write. I like doing that. The ending, as always, was ridiculously difficult for me. I never know how to end books and
it's
how it feels satisfying. It's because the end has to sort of dovetail and answer whatever the question is that you're putting in the beginning, and you don't want to tie things up too neatly because then it sounds stupid. So that was hard, and it's always, when your writing is going well and you're sort of in the zone, it's really like you're in a parallel universe. And that part, even if it's hard, is wonderful. It's when you're not in the zone and you're looking at the sentences and you're thinking, oh my God, this is such a stupid sentence, that's when it's really hard. And there were many, many times like that. But I've learned through the years that usually means that the next day is going to be better. So that's part of the deal.
All right. Jacob says, congratulations on your wonderful new novel. And I guess you've mostly answered this already, but if you have anything you want to add, what is the writing process like for you? Particularly, what was it like when you were writing With or Without You?
It's always different and always the same in that every time I approach a new book, what Barbara said, it's a different book. It's like you've forgotten how to write. It's sort of like, well, how did I do the last book? And actually, it takes me a really long time to let go of my past book which all of a sudden seems like this shining wonder because it's been out in the world, and it's gotten decent reviews, and you think, oh, it's so great, I did that, but there's a shining wonder, and here's this lump of horrible leaden clay, and I don't know how to shape it. It's hard. The writing process was really hard, and I guess it's just what I do, and it's always the most wonderful and the most terrible job of all to have, but mostly the most wonderful.
All right. Let's see. Sherry would like to know if you have a writers group that you work with or if you work alone.
I do have a writers group. It's Barbara, who I email all the time to ask questions. I mean, I don't have a writers group where we sit down and we're all talking about one thing, but I have specific writers who I depend on and I count on and I throw ideas at. I work with Barbara. I work with a few other writers who it's really important for me to talk to. So we're always sort of trading pages and doing things for each other. And looking at somebody else's work is as important as having somebody else look at yours, because if you can look at somebody else's work and figure out, oh, this is why it's not working, and I wonder what would happen if you did this, then first of all, it makes you feel really smart. And second of all, it helps you figure out what to do in your own work. So that's a good thing.
Or even more, you notice what's wrong in someone else's work and you go, oh, that's just what I did.
Yes, exactly. Yes, writers tend to have the same issues where they, so it's just helpful. It's really important to have other writers in your corner.
All right. Michelle said, I was very mad at...
I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
No problem. Said I was very mad at Simon for I felt causing Stella's coma by trying to rekindle their past. And then I was mad at him for not leaving to pursue his dreams. I wonder if you felt that way too. I love how complex the characters are. Nothing is black and white. I love Simon's relationship with Stella's mom too, so much.
Oh, Simon. When I first wrote the pages of Simon, he was a lot worse than he is now. And people would say, well, he's kind of a jerk. And I would say, no, you don't understand. He's a human being. He's going to grow. When you understand him, you will love him the way I love him. And I do love him. I mean, there's always the issue of, do you have to write characters that are sympathetic all the time? And I don't think you do. I mean, Simon did behave very badly, but so did Stella at times, and so did Libby. Certainly did a terrible thing. But the thing is that people can do terrible things, but if you understand why did they feel compelled to do that, you can feel compassion for them, and you can understand them, and you can come to want the best for them. And that is what I did with Simon. I mean, I think he changed so much towards the end of the book, and he is well on his way to changing even more. I mean, to my way of thinking, he still has a little more growing up to do, and that's fine. And I think he's going to do that, and I think he's going to be a mensch because he's been through this stuff. But I loved him from the get-go, maybe because I understood where he was coming from. But not all characters have to be, Pollyanna. They don't.
Well, they're much more interesting when they're
interesting.
Complex, and
Right.
It's even when they do bad things.
Yeah. There's this thing in screenwriting called the save the cat moment. I'm sure you know that. It's like where you have this person who's a terrible villain. Maybe he's a serial killer, but he walks by a building and there's a fire and he hears this cat meowing, and he runs into the building and he saves the cat and he's patting the cat and he takes the cat home, and all of a sudden you feel sympathy for him and empathy because you think he's not all bad, and nobody is all bad or all good. We're all very complex human beings who any moment we can do unspeakable things, but there's reasons behind those unspeakable things, and that's what makes it interesting.
Like sociopathic fathers?
Yes. Yes.
Right. Sherry would like to know, what, if anything, did you edit out of this book?
Oh my God. So much backstory because Chuck would say, we don't need that story. I had chapters and chapters and chapters about Libby and her brother, which I loved, and Chuck made me take out. I had a whole lot more about, what else do I have? Oh, I had chapters about Libby's training as a nurse, which I really liked, which was really fun. Chuck said, no, it has to go. It has to go. Most of these things were things that he said that had to go. And I also had very different beginnings that I threw out and rewrote. I didn't know how to start the book. At one point, they were at the ocean. She went in the ocean and she was drowning. And I had that. And then I thought, I didn't like that. It didn't work. So I threw that out. I always tell myself I'm going to save every draft, but I never do. And Barbara, you probably know why, because then you'd have like 8,000 pages sitting around in your office. But there was a lot that hit the wastebasket.
Well, what I do is I have a file called segments, and all the things for each book and all the things that I have to throw out, I put in that file. I never print it out because I think, well, maybe I'll be able to get them back. And maybe 1% of the things I actually get back, but I do end up with 100 pages or so for each book.
Yeah,
I took out.
That's a good idea. I think I'll start to do that because it's terrible to destroy it when you like it, and if it doesn't work there, maybe it'll work someplace else.
Yes, right.
All right. I think last question is from Karen, and she said, at what point did you start sharing your draft with your editor? Seems scary to share something that you know isn't finished or figured out yet.
Oh, it's terrifying. It's terrifying to share anything. Before I share with my editor, I share with, I have about 4 or 5 people I trust to read it, who are all writers. And I show them from the first page in the first draft. And they know that they can be brutal because we all know it's a first draft. And I know that they know that I can write. So we all know that I'm showing them stuff that is sort of garbagey, but at this point we're looking to fix it. But before I even write, I have deep conversations with people about what I'm thinking about writing, and I'm not sure how to do it. I had one with you, Barbara, and I think it was with Christina Baker Klein. Like, I forget whose reading it was, but we were all sitting around drinking and talking about this book that I had no idea how to do. It's very scary, but once I get it before it goes to my editor, it goes to my agent, and she's also an editor. And by the time it gets to her, I have 5 people I trust who have told me, okay, it works well, and it works. It worked. It's okay. So then I send it to my agent, and she always makes me rewrite it, but it's high-level rewriting. You know what that is. So it's high-level rewriting, so you get to see it get deeper and better. And then I'd give it to my editor, and then usually he has a lot to say.
Too much.
A lot to say, and we go back and forth. And there's a lot of emails, and there's a lot of my saying, I don't understand, explain it again. And he's very patient and kind, and he does. And so until I finally get it. And there are some things that I want to do that he doesn't want me to do that I do anyway. But I would say that I accept like 98% of what he says. And then the other 2% I get stubborn about because I want, and I get to do that. So I wish I will.
That's great. Well, thank you both so much. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I am such a big fan to both of you, and it was so great. Thank you all for coming out tonight, or not really coming out, but being here and enjoying this, and for your patience about the initial technological problems. It really was a great event, and I just thank you all.
It was wonderful.
Thank you. Could now go out for a drink.
I know, go out for drinks. Thank you so much, Barbara, and thank you so much, Stacy, and everybody else. Remember that I am offering to mark up pages for you if you buy a book, and I have these lovely book plates that I'm going to send to the bookstore, or you can ask me for it, I'll send to you. And I just want to say, buy books. It's very important right now. Buy from independent bookstores, support the bookstores, and also support authors. We need you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
Have
all
a great
so much.
night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.